fall semester presentation. And as when I started this project, or started this semester, I thought what I'd be learning would be more looking like this, a very basic problem, few things, and a solution. But as the semester came around, I learned that it was more looking like this, with a lot of twists and turns and a lot more complicated than what it seemed on the surface. This is a disclaimer just saying that some of the info is from like websites and stuff that I had to research. My mentor, Miss Allie Westover, she's an A&M grad in biomedical engineering. She works for NASA in the hunch program. She is a coordinator across the state as a mentor and design and prototyping head developer. ISM, it is a independent study mentorship. It is essentially it's where students get the opportunity to have experience in the field that they wish to pursue as a career, from medical to engineering. We as the class, each student's required or gets to go to their mentorship for 3 hours a week or 6 hours every 2 weeks. While in doing this, we have our own personal assignments, from doing a poster to doing our own research and research reports. My semester study, I chose to focus on the Ball Clamp Foot Restraint. Very interesting thing. It's a product of Hunch. It is, the reason I picked it is because it was a successful product of Hunch, and it shows the whole process from idea to solution, and the whole going through each step that it takes to go to flight as a product. Yep. The key points I'd like to discuss in this presentation is that obviously the Ball Clamp Foot Restraint, Hunch, the engineering process throughout the process of making it and in the process of developing it. Then the certification, which is a lot larger aspect of getting a product into space than I was expecting, which I learned this semester. And then obviously safety. The Ball Clamp Foot Restraint, this bad boy right here, it is essentially a platform where you put your foot for astronauts so that they can move around. What happened was, on the International Space Station, the ISS, astronauts would be doing experiments, and they would have to plant their feet down, and then they would have to turn their bodies, and this would cause pain and discomfort, and then there was a problem. So Hunch took this problem and analyzed it and gave it to their students across the country to solve. And one group figured out, if we make this ball clamp and allow it to turn and have movability, it solved the problems while also being efficient in how it was placed. Hunch. You've heard me say Hunch a few times already, and Hunch is a program for students to test and be a part of something as big as NASA programs, as building a part for the Ball Clamp Foot Restraint or doing culinary. They have programs for every subject matter, and they offer opportunities for students to test what they know and engage in the engineering process. Students can engage and develop their own ideas in a way that is innovative and inclusive. But there's also a competition aspect to Hunch. They have their own challenges, and they have competitions where they have to present their ideas in front of people, and they have to show that their idea is a better version of what is the previous problem and causing a solution. The engineering process. The engineering process is at hand all through the development. It is the basis of almost all changes that happen within the product and development. The engineering process starts with just a problem. You research the problem, you brainstorm ideas, and then you figure out what you want to do with these ideas. And with that, you start to test and develop a prototype of your own or an idea of your own, and then you create your solution. And usually this takes many tries. It doesn't just happen in one shot. This was utilized throughout the Ball Clamp Foot Restraints process from when the students were first developing their designs to whenever NASA itself takes the design and has to test the materials, test the shape, and how to really make it as efficient and flight ready as possible. The engineering process is in almost every job or anything is evident, especially whenever it comes to NASA. This is just a sign of how in depth the process can be. This is just one step in the process, but yet it has several sections of it. This is the prototyping. For NASA at least, you start off with a breadboard or a very basic model of a prototype just to show the functionality of the item rather than the best aspects. Then you get into a more in-depth and more tested version of it, the brass board, where it's just testing to have the most efficient or best version of itself that it could be. And then you go into the engineering, where they go through the engineering process, testing every little nick and cranny to produce the best product that fits the requirements and fits the regulations to make the best end result as you can make. And then you have the prototype unit, which is it fits the testing, like the trials, and it's almost as good as the flight ready column, but there's still it's for the training and less so the actual flight. It is what a class 3 hardware is, what is the training and prototype level. Then you have the qualifications, where it just meets the certifications, where they test it, they beat it down, they just do the most extraneous test on it to make sure that it can fit and handle all situations. And then finally, the flight unit, the one that goes into storage and then sent up, is the one that is the peak of the design and is the most ready for actual usage. Certification process. This is the first page on the build package. In order to have a product be flight ready, you have to complete several certifying processes, where you have to get signatures and stamp off that this meets the restraints and requirements that it says it does, from how the metal was made originally to how it's shaped, or each angle. This first one is the JSC form 881, or the subassembly processing form. It is before you build it, is the saying that this design fits these constraints and it fits the NASA requirements. Then you have the certification of compliance, stating that this material or part fits the NASA requirements and standards. Oh no, that's not good. Then you have the material confirmation, saying that this aluminum has been treated exactly that is to NASA standards. There's nothing extraneous, nothing extra has happened in the process. This is confirming all the actual physical aspects of this part. making sure that it hits all standards set by NASA. Then you have the JSE form 829 is the dimensional like analysis sheet. It's saying that each turn, each corner, each edge fits the requirements stated in the original drawings and engineering setup, so that a machinist has properly done their job and created the product to standard. Then you have the material certification. Each material that goes up on the ISS requires a very specific and stringent a certification process. You can't just put aluminum on a bolt and be like, okay, that's okay. You have to make sure that the aluminum hasn't been treated in any unnecessary way, or treated in a way that they don't want on the ISS. Thinking back to a single Clico, I believe, they lied on the certification and said that it was good, but whenever it was treated differently or not how it's supposed to, it causes a chain reaction and led to a mission failure. And this is just the report of the material certification, just stating how it meets each of them, from flammability to stress situations, stating that this won't be if it can't catch fire, or if it does catch on fire, it's not going to burn, it's going to fall apart rather than. Also, before I move on, I'd like to say how the Ball Clamp Foot Restraint is a unique process in the certification, because it is a Class 1E certification, which is experimental. That means it's a quickened process. It's for objects that are less risk factor towards the overall mission success. It's more for comfort items, such as the Ball Clamp Foot Restraint. This is interesting because it is a more recent development, and it is caused for products to be able to move up to flight worthiness with months sooner than the standard Class 1 hardware. Safety. In all jobs, which most of y'all know, there's safety requirements. NASA is definitely no different, and developing a product such as the Ball Clamp Foot Restraint is no different. You have to file and pass many review boards, safety review boards, that are full of material engineers or structural engineers that will say, they'll toss a bunch of situations at you and say, what if an astronaut is flying through and kicks off of it? And what negative effects could happen from this? And they will test you, and you'll have to make sure that your design is compliant and helps and won't have any negative and major mission causing mission failure. That's those review boards are there to make sure that the product doesn't have a negative connotation on the mission. Then there's the process of making sure there's no edges or way to harm an astronaut. So one of the inspectors they have these gloves, and they rub them across the entire thing, and if there's a single snag, you have to go and burr it and sand it till it's even or clean. So safety is the basis of how they produce these. It's from the start to the end. You can't even start it without having restraints based off of what's safely available for it, but you can't even put it on until it's completely checked in the best model that it can be in the safest way it can be. Throughout the semester, we had research opportunities and research requirements from my class. One research opportunity was to find an article or event that has happened online and then do a report on it. I chose an article that went into depth on how there's several opportunities across the country and across the world for students to interact in projects that lead to products going into space. I read about a project that these students in Germany, these high school students in Germany, from a program called it's like Shy Fly or something, I forgot. So it was German. I didn't know how to say it. But anyways, they had been able to access a similar program to Hunch in their high school experience and offered them the opportunity to jump into a career such as engineering for space flight. This obviously Hunch isn't the only one of its kind, but Hunch offers I read about several successful things from Hunch, from a table that is attached and allows for them to eat and sit down in like the galley, and then also of these stowable bags that allowed for food to be stored and everything in a very sensible manner. My product is essentially a visual representation of what happened, what's the process of getting a ball clamp foot restraint idea, how it's even becomes an idea to flight. It starts as a problem. Hunch assesses the problem, disseminates it, and produces it to the students. The students then participate in our EDD equivalent, and they go through the engineering process, learn everything they can, test their product. Then they take it to competition. Then NASA, or mostly just the Hunch division, takes these successful products and begins to manufacture, do their own engineering process on the materials, on the situation, and then certify them coherently, all at the same fluid time. And then it's off to flight, and it becomes it's stored and then off to flight. It's this pink paper stuff that's kind of cool looking. I liked it. So throughout the semester, I had to keep artifacts, something that you talked about or was relevant in your project or in your mentorship throughout the year. As you can tell, most of these are papers and forms. That's because my project and mentorship was less surrounded by the job itself, but more about the process and what is happening. What are they doing? What are they gaining? Down here is the pink paper. That's not what it really looks like, but it's the only one I could find that looks similar to it. You have the International Space Station, because that's constantly in discussion, because everything you do has a grand effect, even slight up there. And then you got the ball clamp. We got my poster project that was an assignment in the year that represents just it has pictures of when I went to the Clear Creek building, and it was just a good example of stuff that I did throughout the year. I created a website, and this website was the basis of most of my assignment submissions. We would put all of our assignments, put all of our journals, all of our mentor logs in the website, all up until this final project, which I'll put in after this. And if y'all would like to see it after, just ask. In conclusion, I learned a lot with this semester. I gained some valued information. I did not know that putting a smart idea up in space was going to be as hard as it actually is. You can't just give them, okay, here's the product. You have to go through several steps, several certifications, lots of work. I'm very grateful for the opportunity I had to be under Ms. Westover during this time, and I got to learn a lot about the problem solving and of meaningful solutions. I'd like to thank all of you for being here. I'd like to thank Ms. Westover first for being my mentor and being awesome the entire time and teach me all these new things. I'd like to thank Coach Webb for coming and taking the time out of his day to watch this and not that super presentation, but thank you. And I'd like to thank you two for being here. Moral support, thank you so much. And thank you, Mom. Love you. Yeah, and that's it. That's my work cited. And thank you again. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask.